Hey guys, this is Jim West. Got Del Ross and also got Wes Matera down in I guess it's Chowan County. Is that right, Wes? The Edenton's
Yes,
in
sir.
Chowan, right? That's
Yes,
what I
sir.
thought. I'll tell you what, that's some fun places to go. You can drive out hours and hours northeastern North Carolina without a care in the world. At least when I go down there, I remember going all the way to Elizabeth City, going to Gates County, Gatesville area. And the only thing you worry about is running into a deer at night. But good football, a lot of speed and stuff. Wes, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And
No problem.
this topic we're about to talk. Thank you, Wes. The topic we're about to talk about, you'll find real interesting, Wes. Dale, I'll let you go ahead and lead off on it.
Okay. So this week on Talking Preps, they had a coach to coach discussion about this. And then Langston asked me and gave me 30 seconds, which is not enough time to begin to answer the question. And in our back channel communications, there's been a number of back and forth about this particular the narrowed point of this subject, uh, and that is if Independence had lost to Butler Friday night, explain to someone that doesn't understand why Butler would travel to Weddington. So uh, and I don't mean to offend them, but I'm a pretty straight up person when I talk about things, and so I finally Sunday in a message I sent out, I was just like, "Do you guys even understand RPI?" And I'm not. I've already done a thing on explaining RPI. I just want to explain why that situation occurred, and let me get through it, and I'll come back and tell you where the formula is uh, a flaw in the formula that could have uh, helped in this situation. But first, as I go into this, I want people to understand, as I always say, I'm all about objective data, not no subjective. I don't like human bias getting in the way of picking things. But let's just talk about why Butler would have traveled to Weddington. So first of all, to qualify into playoffs, you either win a conference championship or you get seeded in if your RPI is high enough. Now, we take all of our conference champions and then we drop them in, and as we bring in, and they get the first slots in the seeding. Now, the rest of the playoffs is filled with by RPI, and your ranking or your seeding for your number one conference champions is also done by RPI. So the reason that people get concerned about this, Jim, or question this around these parts is because one reason is because Butler beat Weddington. And the first thing I want to say about that is just because you lose to a team doesn't necessarily mean that you should if you beat a team that you should necessarily be seated higher than that team. Here's a perfect example. Let's say UNC basketball loses 3 games this year, and they all happen to beat NC State, just because I'm an NC State fan. And NC State loses 15 games. Probably a realistic on that second one. Uh, does that mean that in one of those 15, I mean, one of those 3 times beaten in Carolina's in, say, the ACC championship game. And then they go and they seed everybody. So North Carolina's lost 3 games. They're probably a top 5 in the nation team. NC State is probably not cracked the top 25, or if they have, in this scenario, they would be somewhere around 25. Anybody that makes that argument that Butler should have been seated higher than Weddington would also agree then that NC State should be seated higher in NC2A playoffs than UNC. That's absurd, of course. But that's just a note that you don't see just because you beat somebody head to head. Now, a head to head could come into play if only two teams were tied, let's say,
Right.
and it doesn't. Our current playoff situation does not take into account anything other than RPI. So don't. We didn't have anything put into the formula at the beginning of the season, and trust, even if somebody 10 weeks into the season had said, oh, that we should add this, I would say, no, don't do that, because once you start the game or the season, you roll with what you went with, what everybody knew up front. So that's just my first point. Okay, so we take our conference champions and we seed them. Now, RPI, one of the arguments people yell about is strength of schedule, strength of schedule. And anytime anybody brings up strength of schedule, I immediately know that they know nothing about RPI. Now, is the strength of schedule that comes from RPI the best method to get to a strength of schedule? No, it's not. But it is, or it inherently has built into it, strength of schedule.
Right.
That's your opponent's winning percentage and
then your opponent's opponents.
Right, exactly. So there is inherently built into the RPI system a strength of schedule. So anyway, Weddington played more teams and their opponents played more teams with better RPIs themselves. Right. Ultimately, that gave Weddington a higher RPI. Now, that's why, as we lump them in, we put all of our conference champions in, and then we put them in by RPI in their seeding. That's why Butler was seeded lower than Weddington. Now, Jim, I do think a correction, and this is probably one of those points. I'm a huge believer in the scientific method and apply the scientific method to as many things as you can. And one of those things should have been, okay, here's the playoff situation that we're going to go with. Now tell me what's wrong with it. Tell me why this isn't right. And then find the things that people come up with.
And tweak them.
And tweak them. It's got to be objective, though. It cannot be anything subjective.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dale, because right now there's two different types of platform. You can do what the NCAA does with bowl games or basketball, the March Madness, and do a subjective platform where you get this, competition committee together and make decisions. The association doesn't do that because that's a big recipe to make a lot of people mad.
Exactly.
I mean, it's always been that way too. I mean, it's been pretty transparent. Back in the day, it used to be before the playoffs even started. If you were in the Rocky River, you had three seeds. You know exactly where seed number 1 was going to play against maybe seed number 3 from the Central Carolina Conference. Seed number 2 would play against the seed number 2 for the District 7, and seed number 1 might play the winner of the 2A foothills or whatever you want to call it. But we do, and that to me was like I was taking all the guessworks out of it that way. Different platform now. We got 64 teams instead of 32. But objectivity, though, the big thing I tell people, though, this is a first world problem. To me, how the seats are is not as important about how we treat our refs.
I understand that. I don't want to deviate from this, though.
Yeah. I agree with that. But to me, it's like I just don't have the passion to get too upset about this.
No, I don't get upset about it because once we roll into something, you may not like the statement, but it is what it is. We know what it is. And what are you going to do about it? But
Right.
let me throw at you a thought that keeps objectivity in and probably should be considered. Now, here's a difference in Weddington and their conference championship and Butler and their conference championship. Butler was undefeated. Weddington was not.
Right.
So, one thing that could be objectively added in is that, okay, we're going to put you win conference champions, you get the first groups of seedings. Now, if you were undefeated in conference, you get that group of seedings, and then one loss or two loss. So that's an
go down.
Exactly.
That's objective. Boy. Now,
that's objective.
I was going to ask Wes. Let's say Wes has been promoted czar of the North Carolina High School Athletic Association. Wes, you can do anything you want to. Rolls with the playoffs. Tell me what you would do. And you can't be that I'd have Holmes number one seed. If
just addressing this situation, because I want to stick to this situation right now. Because I know we got viewers that are kind of tuning in right now just for this.
So, Wes, what's your thoughts?
Okay, we can't hear you.
Yeah, the volume might have gone out, Wes.
Or the don't have a wreck. Or the
we can see you. Well, I'll tell you what. We'll come back to you, Wes.
Yeah.
When you can, if we hear you, we'll let you.
We'll let you chip back in. So, Jim, I think that adds in another objective point. Not wanting to have someone say, see, this is where people pull up strength of schedule. But I took a look at this when this occurred. And remember, we discussed it, I think, in the first week. We even had a little discussion about it. And, is RPI the best system? No, there is, I think, a better system. And that would be to use a true power ranking, still using objective data. And that would have a better hit at a true strength of schedule as well.
Yeah.
But you still have to find a way to address situations like this without getting a human in and for it to be known up front. So potentially looking at things like, not is your conference stronger than another conference, because that may or may not be fair. So let's try to do things that are fair and applies to everyone evenly. And that would be to, okay, what was your conference win percentage? That was a part of the seeding process and qualifying process back, about 10 years ago, I think. Your conference win percentage factored in. We certainly, Jim, do not want to go back to that pre-assigned, this conference has this many entries. I hated that. That was, God, because you had conferences like here in Charlotte, where one year a conference might get one team in. Then the next year it's their time now to get two in, and then somebody else has to lose one. I didn't like that.
Here's a thought I have too, though. I also wouldn't mind having the refs involved in this just a little bit. And just hear me out on this. I've seen some really bad behavior on the sidelines. We witnessed some bad behavior on the sidelines too the other couple weeks ago.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And have the refs spend 2 minutes saying, rating both sides about how they treated you. Anybody that's on that sideline in the box or outside the box, and make that part of the equation, and see how if that would actually improve the behavior of some of these.
If you mean the
clowns.
If you mean the seeding equation, my problem with that is it's an opinion from the officials.
And I'm fine with that. With the refs, that doesn't bother me.
Yeah, but it's an objective. If you're talking about the seeding process of a team, that's subjective. And the problem is the politics that would erupt from that. Anytime if somebody knows that in the seeding process, people are upset because they think this is a Max Preps thing.
Can you hear me now?
We
Yes, we
can.
can hear you.
I think I got.
Let me finish this statement and we'll let
Go
you
ahead.
talk.
You
So
find that.
people think that it's a Max Preps formula when it's not. It's an RPI.
Right.
So people get upset just about that little point. But if a human or if anyone knows that, well, an official was able to talk bad about us or grade us badly, thus that impacts our seating. You've now introduced that element of, um, bringing the house down on for people going crazy because a
Right.
human chose one thing over another. That's why I want it needs to be 100% objective data.
I got you on that.
I'm with you.
Yeah,
If we could do subjective, I'm with you, Jim. If I could lean to subjective. All right, Wes, your turn.
Wes, what's going on, man?
I think some, and I've stated this before. So, in my opinion, we're in a situation where the NCHSAA needs to be, like you're talking about, objective as possible. We've used Max Preps rankings before. Personally, I think if we went back to a national ranking model, that takes some pressure and some potential arrows being shot at Chapel Hill. That takes that out of the equation if we're using a national formula rather than one that we created just for our state. And because we've proven we can use it before, and I think we can use it again, to be honest with you.
Well, I tend to agree with that, though.
Yeah.
There's one problem I had, or I won't say problem. I'll just raise to you that in 2016, 2015, 2016, we were producing a report, and we had written our own formula, looking at Massey and other people's formulas, and then enhanced the formula. It was still objective, but it performed better than Max Prep's formula. So the when we used it not just for ranking, but we used it for predictive abilities so that we could predict who would beat who. And that report actually started on week 1 and predicted the entire season. Then week 2, it recalibrated and predicted the rest of the season, so on and so forth. Max Preps had a hard time of predicting wins above 55%. And the formula that we had was in the high 80s by the end of the season.
Gotcha.
So, but I understand what you're saying about it being a national formula. It's the same formula. And I would be for that even, just going to Max Prep's power rankings and using that. Back to you, Wes.
Yeah, and I also, and once again, I might step on some people's toes, but I think we're possibly in an era where we need to, with all the split leagues, we need to put everybody. So let's just use 2A because right now we're 2A. You put everybody in the 2A pot, and where your RPI is or where your Max Preps rankings are is how we're seeded. Because I think we all know there's some leagues that are a lot stronger than others. And then with some split leagues, we got some folks getting seeded as conference champions that might not typically be a true conference champion. I'm trying to be politically correct, which y'all know I struggle with.
Well, I'll tell you what,
well-
I agree with you on that because I mean, look at your conference here. You got Northeastern, you got Hereford County. Those are two of the best 2A teams, probably in the top 15 at least, and not top 12 in the state. I mean, and look at Wallace Rose Hill, East Duplin, and James Keenan. They're top 20s, And then you got some conferences that you won't have a top 20 team that wins it. I agree with you on that. It's
we always want to reference football, but I know there was a case in volleyball this year in 1A where there was a team that only played conference games. They didn't play any non-conference games. Their conference was, for lack of a better term, pretty bad, and they were seated higher than some of the elite 1A volleyball teams in this state in the East. And that, I mean, it's just, to be honest with you, that shouldn't be the case.
Right. So my problem with first of all, I don't want split conferences. But that said, if there's a split conference, it's not fair to the splits because they didn't have the option of being in the conference or not. So let's say if the way you would think it should work, and let's say we have 1A and 2A teams together. The way you think it should work, and it's really not the way we know that it plays out in the actual games. The 2A should be better than the 1A. But let's just suppose that's the case. It's always proven that 2A teams are better than 1A and 3A is better than 2 and 4A is better than 3A. So if that is just a known fact, it never gets turned over.
It's pretty consistent.
Yeah. So we take 1As and put them together with 2As. And then we say, you have no shot at winning a conference championship. So you have no shot at being in that group of number 1 seeds within the classification that you're going to get thrown into to play in. That's where I have the problem, because it then becomes unfair. I think that's a point of not being fair to everyone.
And I can speak personally. I mean, we're fighting that battle right now in the league we're in. We're in a 2A, 3A split. And once again, this is nothing I hadn't said publicly. Hats off. Currituck and First Flight have great programs, but Currituck is almost 1,100 ADM. First Flight's 950, I think. And Manio's, and I use Manio as an example. Manio's sitting down there with 530 maybe. And the reason I use Manio as an example, because they won the region in cross country, and I think they finished runner up in the state, and they couldn't even win our conference.
Right.
They can't even declare themselves conference champions because First Flight won the league. I struggle with that. I just struggle with it. And so, like I said, there's similar things going on in the mountains right now where the ADM disparity is, and you use the word not fair, Jim, you're all over it. I mean, Dale, y'all are all over the fact, and it's not.
Yeah, the problem is hugely impactful in 1A, where we see some teams or some schools, and sometimes ADM's not the full picture, but let's assume ADM is the whole picture. We'll see nearly 200 ADM teams, competing against 400 ADM teams. What ADM should normally tell you is that you'll at least have a higher population of, say, for football, you'll have a higher population of males to choose from. And you may say your probability of hitting a star becomes higher the more that you can pick from. That's where ADM comes in. But, Jim, one of the things I was thinking about in a power rating, I was thinking about this weekend, I am definitely going to bring back the formula, is that instead of using, maybe trying to adjust, not using 1A, 2A, 3A, maybe slightly using ADM as just a small tweaker, but a better indicator of a team's strength is size of roster. Because that's where 1A teams struggle the most in playing 2A, then 2A playing 3, and 3A playing 4, really becomes depth of how many players you have.
It's also development. I know a lot of 1A teams don't have JV teams. A lot of 2A teams do not have JV teams.
They don't have the players. Yeah.
Wes, just out of curiosity, what are your numbers like for JV and varsity at homes?
Before COVID, we were in the 70s, close to 80. Post COVID, we're trying to get to 60, 65 for our program, and 35 varsity, 30 JVs, and that hadn't always worked out. I think there's rumors schools are discussing a Smoky Mountain Conference situation where they're combining the middle school with the JV, like the Smoky Mountain League has had so much success with, and in early in my career, that seemed like a foreign concept to a lot of us. But as numbers tend to dwindle and it getting harder and harder to hire coaches on the middle school level. I think that's becoming more of a reality where the high school coaches coach both teams. You get to coach the same kid for 6 years, and you know what you got coming up. You're teaching your system. You're not having to force somebody to teach your system when they don't really want to.
But the kids playing with the high school, right?
Yeah, so
on the JV team of the high school.
Yeah,
it's kind of middle school, 7th through 9th. It's
Neil Blankenship's the expert of that. But from what I can gather, 7th, 8th, and your 9th graders would play what become a middle school JV hybrid. If that 9th grader steps foot on the field with the varsity, they become a varsity player.
Right.
So you're doing away with the 8-quarter rule then.
Essentially, yeah.
Because you have to in that situation.
And something else with the Smoky Mountains, Western Highlands did the same thing. They've done it for 2 years now. And if you have a 7th through 9th grade, it's kind of like a junior high school formula. And if you do that, you can't play a team that plays 9 and 10th graders. You got to play only teams that offer 7th through 9th. That's what Western Highlands and Smoky Mountain are doing. They're playing a lot of JV games against each other now because of that.
That's an interesting idea. It's almost akin to the having a like a 9th grade team or something like that, like some schools have. That's the big concern, though, is that formula could only work, I think, in the smaller classifications, first of all. In the bigger classifications, they would want it, but you'd really have to control that of the team that those younger kids are playing on, and they play against. Couldn't have. Yeah, you wouldn't want to have sophomores. Certainly would not want to have juniors on the field. And a lot of JV programs, Tommy Knotts was real famous for this, of making sure the kids still played. If they were juniors and they weren't starters or going to be significant contributors on varsity, they played JV so they continued to get playing time and develop.
Yeah, his goal was ready to have them by the time, ready to contribute when they're a senior year. And I think it's a good idea. He did it, like, if I remember correctly, he did a lot with offensive linemen, especially because sometimes that's the type of kid, or that's the group that takes more time to develop and get ready.
He did, but he also did it with I was real good friends. I became real good friends with a kid that was a linebacker. And so the kid played JV for 3 years, and he was a team captain his senior year, and starter and major contributor. Mm-hmm. The philosophy was Tommy didn't want you sitting on the bench and not playing if you could be continuing developing. So if you're not going to, play it down. I remember when my son became a sophomore, coach had a talk with me and said, we can bring him up, and he'll get very few snaps because we already have a starting center and, we're set. So, or he can stay on JV. And I said, I want him to stay on JV. I want him to develop. And he started the next 2 years on varsity and was a team captain. So that philosophy of playing younger kids could also feed into this, but my concern would be going up against juniors on a JV team.
Right.
So you would have to control that, Jim, set rules in.
Yeah, you'd have to be 7th through 9th and 10th through 12 on that. One question I had for Wes, I know Wes coached a year over in Davidson County at Thomasville, and Wes, I know Thomasville is kind of like Holmes when it comes to ADMs. They kind of teeter between the 1A, 2A. I know Holmes went to 1A for exactly 4 years, and they're back to 2A now. What kind of similarities did you have, and what kind of differences did you have between like a Holmes and a Thomasville?
Oh, obviously Thomasville City Schools, so it's in a city area. Um, Similar type kids, very blue collar, good work ethic. Um, Obviously the tradition at Thomasville was one thing that definitely drew me there. And something that occurred out of that situation. Someone I've become good friends with is the AD Steve Bear. Um, but just being able to be around that type of tradition inside of a city limit with a city school. But yeah, we're very similar in the fact we're fortunate. We're a one county high school at Edenton, and Thomasville City Schools was a one county high school. I remember, head coach Chip Williams told me a long time ago, if you can become a head coach in a one horse town, that's where you want to be. Because when you're in a 3, 4, 5 horse town, if somebody gets something, the other four got to get it. And
Right.
we're very fortunate at Edenton. If we need something, we don't have to worry about if 2 more high schools are going to get it or not. So
That's a good point.
Yeah, very very similar in that standpoint. So, but obviously, sorry, Jim, I had never been out west. What I call out west of Raleigh. So that was a learning experience for me. And if I had to do it all over again, obviously I'd do a lot of things differently, but I'd also do some the same. But I believe you get sent out there for a reason. I enjoyed my time out there, and I was fortunate to be able to get back close to home.
Well, let me ask you this: what was one of the biggest transitions going from Eastern style to Western style barbecue? Was that a problem for you at all?
I like both of them. I was good. Now the slaw, I like white slaw rather than the red slaw. But
No, Yankton Valley slaw.
That's not wet. That's not Western barbecue, Jim.
Yeah, but I will say this with all respect. Something I learned very quickly: the level of coaching in that area is much more concentrated, and there are more quality coaches at each school. Due to the populations and things. That's one thing I learned quickly that's different from Eastern North Carolina. I mean, let's be honest. If you look at all the schools around Eastern North Carolina, most of us got ties some way, somehow. Antonio Moore graduated from Northeastern High School. Mark Harnley, who's won a ton of basketball games at Camden, graduated from there. Chad Williams, the first flight AD basketball coach, he's got ties there. Justin Robertson at Perquimans graduated from there. Hogg went to Bertie. I went to Camden. All of us in that area have ties. So one of the battles we fight, Jim and Dale, is getting people that aren't from Northeastern North Carolina to come to Northeastern North Carolina, and it's tough.
Oh, it is. I mean, I grew up in North Carolina. I never thought for one second I was going to move to Hertford or to Windsor or Murfreesboro or Edenton. I could see Edenton's if you've gone downtown, Edenton is a good sell to me. I love that area. Elizabeth City, I like that a lot. Plymouth, it's on the water, but there's a lot of culture. There's a lot of pride in Northeastern North Carolina that few people quite understand. It's a beauty in there, but at the same time, if you're not used to the culture, if you're used to going to the matinee or going to watch a professional game or something like that, or watch a D1 game, you're going to have to learn how to drive and drive a lot. And it's just a fact of life down there.
You need a Target or a Walmart, then we can't help you.
Yeah, right. But if you need to find a deer stand, there's deer stands all over the place.
You need to wet a line or try to catch a catfish or some speckled perch or catch some herons in the net. We can help you.
Rockfish is what we call them down in the old striped bass. That's one of the big things.
But Jim, that ain't for a lot of people. So that's why my point was I think the quality of coaching, because of the population and that triad area, is easier to get people hired and easier to find quality coaches that'll stay. Where in our area, if you can get 2, 3, 4 guys, you better latch on to them. I mean, look at the Tarboro staff, all respect in the world for Craddock, Harding, Babb, and all their local guys. They've been able to keep that group together. And that's one of the things is, yes, they got a ton of talent, but let's not kid ourselves. Them 3, 4, 5 guys that's running the show over there can flat out coach with anybody in the state.
Oh, I agree with you. And, just think also about it for guys, we can probably live just about anywhere. But for those of us that are married, you say, hey, I'll just let you know I'm going to take this job over in Gatesville or something like that. And you're used to living in Chapel Hill or Charlotte or Greensboro, you're going to have a fight on your hands. We all know that.
Exactly.
But someone that's from like maybe in Gatesville, for example, they're told like there's a good chance I can take over the Rocky Mount team or somewhere in Greenville or whatever. That's a very salable thing because there's a lot more things to do in life. I mean, but Wes, one question for you though: what do you consider northeastern North Carolina? If you had to draw the boundaries, what would you say?
I think for me it probably stops at Bertie. That whole the Bertie Plymouth line. I mean, I think once you get to Williamston, you're starting to get out of what we call the corner. You're starting to get out of northeastern North Carolina. That's just my opinion. I don't know how other people feel, but and obviously you having Plymouth ties. I don't know how you feel about it, but that's what I.
So Wes, I have an ancestor that he was born in Scotland in 1681. And he died in 1701 in Bertie.
Gotcha.
So in Martin County, my ancestors, the Scottish, that's where they were. So I kind of have a fondness for that area, just for that.
Wes, you ever heard of Bachelor Bay by chance?
Of course, yeah. I got friends that live out.
Okay, Bachelor. My grandmother's maiden name was Bachelor. My grandmother West, and she was born in Ayden, North Carolina, near Voice of America, if you know where that is. And but there's a lot of Bachelors. I mean, they're most of them originated over Rocky Mountain, whatever. But Bachelor is a big name down in northeastern North Carolina. Before I married a lady from northeastern North Carolina, I didn't know anything about that area, and I learned all kinds of stuff about it. But there's a lot of people. A lot of people came that migrated that live in Charlotte or Chapel Hill or Raleigh. Their ancestors migrated from that part of the state.
Yeah, they came down. So my ancestors came down, ended up in Anson County, then over into Union County, and at least the Ross line. Others immediately headed to the mountains and then came back down. But there's a lot of people that did follow that trail, Jim, of down to Anson and kind of over into Charlotte. And I'm sure that same trail headed over, or a similar trail heads over to Raleigh area.
Right. And for my definition, northeast North Carolina, Roanoke River, the Albemarle Sound, if you were touching that or close to that, you're probably pretty close to northeastern North Carolina. Williamston is really where I start, Williamston, Windsor part. Some people try to throw Tarboro in there. I'm like, no, Tarboro is not. Tarboro is more. Tarboro is in their own land. I mean, to me, they're lumped in with Rocky Mount, but I agree with your definition about
more Central Eastern. I guess is what I think about.
Yeah.
Well, Jim, one of the other things I thought we could bring up is how are our first round picks doing? I mean, our picks of first round and who we picked to be here right now, who's still remaining?
Tarboro is for me. We'll start with 1A, I guess. Tarboro versus West Columbus. I didn't have that game. I had Tarboro and I believe Northmore. And Northmore got spanked around in the third round by Wilson Prep, so I was out. Did you pick West Columbus to go to the championship?
So for me, and I'm going to open it up right now, I hope. I am 1A. I am 3 of 4. So the West, the East, I nailed.
Hey, just let you know, Wes has got to jump off. Wes, thank you so much for joining us.
Wes. No problem. Thank y'all for having me. And, it's kind of interesting, and I feel like I need to preface it by saying this. Dale, thank you for having me on and what you said last week. And Jim, thank you for what you said. And I love to banter on social media sometimes too much. And the ironic thing out of this is I think a banter is going to turn into another friendship and somebody I can confide in and look up to, Dale. Because I'll be honest with you, I didn't do my homework when we got to arguing. And a buddy of mine was like, you do realize who you're arguing with? I was like, no, not really. He's like, that guy probably knows more about realignment than a lot of people across this state. So
only because I like Jim. There's a lot of things that are common with Jim and I. We have a certain passion about this. The passion ultimately is that whatever is created, that the kids have a great environment. And for me, it's about the kids' environment, it's coaches' environment, it's friends and family, all of their environment. That we have a good environment for everyone and they all enjoy it. So being that deeply involved, uh, gosh, we have talked realignment forever, probably
Yeah.
before there were uh, this kind of forum before there was social media. Still, groups of us or groups of people interested would get together and talk about alignments and
Yeah.
aligning things, and so
Well,
and our banner was just that. It was banner. I never take anything, um, especially something like that. I don't take it personally.
Yeah, we're here for you, Wes. And if you
yeah.
ever need any support or anything like that, just let me know. Right, wrong, or indifferent, we got your back.
Well, I appreciate it. Well, just know, I mean,
Mhm.
I don't know how much longer, we'll be on the task force before they select a realignment committee, but I mean, just help us get everybody to understand that whoever it is on the committee is going to try to do the best they can for across the state. And I'm
Right.
guilty of this too. A lot of times I'll be like, well, what's best for Edenton? What's best for Edenton might not be what's best for Northeastern North Carolina. And then it might not be what's best for Swain County and the mountains. So I just think, help us as much as we can get folks to understand that whoever's on that committee I think with a clear conscience, with the leadership we got, is going to do the best they absolutely can. And like y'all mentioned earlier, there'll be some things we got to tweak. So there's no doubt we'll come up with a formula or a system or whatever, and then 2 years into that, or as we get closer, we'll have to tweak something. We know that, and
So let
but
me feed something to you to think about. One of my favorite humans is Neil deGrasse Tyson.
got you.
If you know who he is, he's an astrophysicist. And Neil
Okay.
um, he got invited down in Mexico. They've got these alien bodies that have shown up that they found in Peru, and he's already kind of shot down some things. But he was invited to come down and look, and Neil said, uh, "I'm honored, and I'd love to see it, but I'm not the person you should invite. You should invite biologists and other people." But then, as he's talking about this, he talked about the scientific process. And then he also he made a very distinct point. And Jim, you probably find this interesting. When papers are written on something, no title is ever attached to a paper. So
Right.
when a paper is written, you don't see that this person has a PhD from this university. You just get their name. And papers can be submitted from high school students. A paper can be submitted by anybody for review. And what Neil was doing was suggesting that what the Mexicans should do, if it was a previously a living being, even though it may be mummified, there's still, you can get samples and send to as many
Right.
people as you can. And so he was encouraging that to get feedback.
Yeah.
So it's just the what I want to say, Wes, though, is we would also like to see more champion of East, Northeast, 1A, 2A. So if you feel like you ever want to come on to help spread the word, everybody has even worth in my book.
Or if you get a kid that you feel like that wants to learn how to once is a writer and can help us out,
Yeah.
Okay.
we'll mentor them as much as we can. So just let us know.
Okay.
If you know any kids that are good in math,
Yeah.
computer, I am bringing back my algorithm. I am going to bring back Carolina Varsity Report. But
Uh,
I wanted that, just so you know, Wes, I want to start engaging more students to take over and do things. And
yeah.
I don't care where they're located. I don't care if it's some students from one school or some students from another working on
Gotcha.
something together, because in today's world, we can do that. Uh, but we will give also students a platform to do videoing and video interviews and We don't care if they're biased to their own school. That's fine.
That's
Just
fine. Yeah.
Right.
just help them to get introduced into.
Well, I know
Well,
Wes probably better go do some shopping before those stores close down. So, man, I appreciate you coming on there. I was thinking about it. I was like, these stores are going to start closing down here. We're going to make Wes miss it, man. But thank you so
I'm
much
gonna
for joining us.
hit a couple sales before they close. Thanks for what y'all do. And if you ever up our way, swing on by and we'll go to the Old Colony Smokehouse, and that'll be some best barbecue you've had in North Carolina.
I'll be up
Got a
that
deal
way.
there.
All right. Y'all,
I got to come check my ancestors out.
There you go.
I'll be doing that.
well, y'all come see us.
Okay.
All right, brother. Take care.
Thank you, Wes.
See you now. That was
So,
Wes
Jim,
Patero.
I'm sorry. I did have West Columbus in Tarver.
West Columbus. Okay, two-way. I still have Clinton. I did pick Clinton to go to two-way, and they are playing Northern. No, they're not Northern Nash 3A. They're playing. I'm trying to remember who two-way is off the top of my head now. Northeastern.
Northeastern, yeah, because you're making me draw a blank. I got those two.
Okay.
And I got Shelby, but I did not get. I picked Monroe. So I picked Shelby and Monroe to be in the West and Northeastern, and Clinton to be in the West, East. So I was 3 and 4 for 1A and 2A. Really a surprise because I really suck badly on 3A and 4A.
Yeah, 1A I had Mount Airy and Robbinsville, which are the final ones. So
see, I had Mount Airy and Swain County.
Swain County.
Yeah, I picked Swain County, and then after Robbinsville beat Swain County, I don't count this though as my where do I stand. I did switch to carrying Robbinsville all the way to this point, in Mount Airy to go all the way in.
With 2A, I still have Clinton. That was my pick from 2A. And I did not have Northeastern. Sorry, Northeastern. I can't remember who it was. I had Northeastern. I just didn't think they had the defense. And to be honest with you, their defense has been shaky.
You know what?
I remember last week they did good.
I remember when we laid out our picks, all of our picks that first week. It was a long show. And I remember you saying that when you saw that I had Northeastern, went all the way to the regional. It was like, wow. And I appreciate that. Those were things I looked at. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, they have a tremendous offense. I mean, if you
want to put points on the board, they can do it.
Now, in the 2A West, I had Shelby and I had Monroe. I did not have Reesville in there.
Right. So that was we both had the same, and you're gonna have a good ball game. You're going to that ball game this week.
I'm planning to, as long as it's not too wet. Mm-hmm. And I know people will laugh when I say that. I do not like driving when it's raining outside at night. I have a slight astigmatism. I don't wear glasses. I wear these things for readers. Yeah, I have a slight astigmatism, and it impacts a lot when it's wet outside.
And after we do this, and we'll come back and talk about the actual games.
Yeah. Now with 3A, I had 2 of my 4 picks. 3A 71st, I still have them.
That's the only one I have left.
Yeah, I did not have Northern Nash. I had Northern Nash losing the Southern.
I did not. Yeah, I did not have Northern Nash.
And I was trying to remember who else I had for 3A. I'm going to go to my.
I had Shelby and Crest. I mean, I had Crest in Kings Mountain. I really blew it in 3A. Because
I had
Kings Mountain got knocked out early.
Originally, I had Dudley going to the 3A state championship.
Right. Yeah.
And then last week I changed my pick and I picked Crest, and I'm still trying to get over that. So because I've gotten a lot of slack because I did not have Hickory going to the 3A state championship.
I did not either. I've changed things obviously now since both of my selections are out. And we'll talk about that later. But yeah, that's my only remaining pick in 3A is 71st. That's it. I was 1 for 3. I went 3 and 1, and 3 and 1 to 1 and 3, and then it gets worse.
I was trying to remember who I had on there. I know I had Hickory going pretty far, and let's see. You know what? I might have had Hickory going to the. I don't think I did though. I think I had Kings Mountain. Come think of it, I think it was Kings Mountain and Dudley. So three A, I'm sucking. I mean, I have 71st, and I have Dudley back left. But
right. So thankfully, I can go back because I marked my picks up on the bracket. But I kind of remember that when you saw that I had Crest and Kings Mountain, that you had Kings Mountain, and I remember you had Dudley for sure.
Now, with the East 4A East, I was kind of flipped between Hoggard and Cleveland. I thought one of those teams would go, but I did not see Cardinal Gibbons going. I had Rolesville all the way.
Right.
And
I had Rolesville all the way to
and
the championship.
They were up 14-7 or whatever, or 21-14. I think it was 4. I can't remember let's see what the final score was. I know they were up by 7. It was 21-14. 4.5 minutes left. I was feeling pretty good. And then I looked at the next update. It was like Carl Gibbons up by 7. I said, like, crazy person say what? And now, if we had picked Weddington to go to the regional finals, which I did not, I think I had regional. I think they had them going through them.
You had Grimsley out of that side.
Yeah, I had Grimsley beating them, and Grimsley. And the thing about it was, after watching the Grimsley play against Huff and seeing what I knew about Weddington, I did not think Grimsley matched up good at Weddington. I flipped my pick beforehand.
You did. I just like that statement.
And I flipped my pick in 3A. I went from Dudley to Crest. Crest lost, Dudley won. So I screwed myself up, but I redeemed myself for that. But I did not have Independence going there. I had trying to remember who I had. And
I was thinking you had Butler, but I don't remember now.
I think I did have Butler, come think of it. And
see, I had Butler and Huff. And then after Huff got knocked out, I switched immediately to Weddington. I didn't think Weddington. I didn't think Grimsley would beat Weddington either. Honestly, I didn't think it would be as competitive a game as the Huff Grimsley game was.
Right.
And it wasn't. But I switched immediately to Weddington. I will say that at the start of the season, I picked Independence to win the state championship. So.
Oh, yeah. We both, and then, they had a very average win against, I think it was Hickory Ridge. They beat them maybe by 7 or something like that. And I'm like, I think I really erred in judgments.
Yeah.
And then they started riding the ship. They lose to Butler. I'm like, okay, that's not bad, but they're showing some life. And they're still playing.
Yeah, they're still playing.
The 5th week of the playoffs, they're still playing. So,
and they've been on the road the entire time.
And the one thing I always go back, I always remember this great song from Green Day, "Wake Me Up and When September Ends." A lot of times, what you do in August and September, record-wise, your scores, your margins, it really doesn't matter that much. It's what you've done recently. October, you're in the conference play. If you're playing November, you're in the playoffs, and you got to kind of refocus a little bit. You got to recalibrate. And there are some people that get trying to compare so-and-so won this game by 12 points on August 18th, and then the other team beat the same team by 4 points on October 27th. So the first team must be better than the second team. I'm like, that's not how it works. And first thing, football is not linear anyway.
No, it's not. It's by no means are games or just 2 games in that kind of situation can bring you to as you say, a linear result. No,
Yeah.
because it really is about how 2 teams match up against each other, not how your team you're going against matched up against some other teams. Now, if you see them play a bunch of other teams that you have played, then you can start drawing some lines. But
Right.
if there's only that one game, you can't really draw a relationship to how you are going to, or this team is going to play against that team.
Well, it's a data point, and as that data point gets older, the less effective it is. It's like
That's right.
if you're doing a poll for like dog catcher of Hillsborough, and Canada Day is up by 8 points over Canada B on August 1st, and then you do another poll and it shows that B is now 2 points ahead of A. Which one are you going to rely on? It's going to be the more recent data. But the one thing is just one polling point. So you have to look at the margin of error. You got to look at how frequent it is. Was there any bias? How was the poll done? Same thing with the games. Games, there's a lot of variables in games. And
exactly.
You have to look at all that.
Exactly. There's a number of variables, just like there are in that single poll instance that you mentioned, because you don't know the sample size. Even if you know the sample size, you don't know that the sample was a broad sample or was it a more focused sample. Even though it may have meant to be a broad sample, it still may have been a focused sample. You just don't know these things. And that's the same thing when you see a team play one team and their result, and another team plays and a result, and then you try to pick how your team's going to do. You don't have enough data.
Well, let me ask you this. If Indy played, let's say they got in a time machine, they played their clones from August 18th that were struggling. Those 2 teams played the team from 3 months ago versus the team today. The team today was going to win, but by how much? I mean, 3 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, and a field goal. I mean, it's a pretty sizable amount, if you ask me.
There has definitely been a sizable increase in performance and, week over week kind of performance.
Execution, yeah.
But what in execution? The question, Jim, that's a hard one, because I'll say that the Independence team that played Friday night against Butler and won 10-7 would probably destroy an earlier Independence team. The real question is, does that same team play Friday night? Because while Independence has increased their abilities, as they should, they've improved, they really played spectacular Friday night. I mean, there was an energy and other elements that helped bring forth a win when you might be outmatched, if you were. So you have those intangibles that actually come up and provide enough to allow you to do what Indy did. They can bring that to bear again this Friday night. They'll win Friday night. If they can bring that to bear in the state championship, they'll win the state championship. The question is, can they do that, Jim? So while they've increased, there's kind of a spike last week, a big spike.
And can they keep it at the spike level?
Does it stay at the spike level, or does it drop down some? And does the drop down back, drop down to, say, where they were at against Watauga, who they handled easily?
Right.
That's a question.
So I'll tell you what, let's go look at the battles for this week. Tarboro, they host West Columbus. Tarboro had a struggle against East Bladen. I mean, I was shocked it was tied at halftime 13-13. I was shocked that Tarboro only scored 1 touchdown in the second half, wins 20-13. they play a West Columbus team that just keeps on winning. I mean, they were pretty much in control of that Wilson Prep game last week. I know the score was a little bit tight. They had a decent lead at halftime, and I think Wilson Prep might have scored in the last several minutes or whatever of the game. But West Columbus wins. I'm not going to say it's out of the possibility West Columbus wins, but I think it has to be close to a perfect storm. Tarboro struggles after Thanksgiving historically. I think Tarboro is going to be they're going to be loaded this next game. I think they got something to prove. I got to go with Tarboro.
So for me, I felt like East Bladen might give Tarboro the best game that Tarboro had seen in the playoffs,
Right.
and they did.
Right.
But I didn't think it was going to be a 7-point game by any means, and I didn't think that Tarboro would be held to 20 points. I kind of saw that maybe East Bladen could score maybe 13, get 2 touchdowns on the board, something in that neighborhood of scoring. That I kind of felt like they might do, that Tarboro would give up their first points of playoff. But I thought Tarboro would still score in the 30s or 40s,
Yeah, it was just a interesting game on that. I think I have Tarboro. I'll put my predictions. I actually bet a point spread this time. I've gotten enough slack on that, but it is what it is. I'm taking Tarboro by 13 points.
Okay.
My high low are pretty decent.
I'm taking Tarboro. And I find it hard to believe that West Columbus, or this game, I'm not just the fact that it's West Columbus. East Bladen proved to be maybe a little bit better than thought. But I can accept that 2-score margin, a 13-point margin, and really wouldn't be surprised if it got up to 20 to 21 points. But
right.
I would say probably maybe something like a 31-14 game, something like that.
So they're going to the 1A West last week. The state the least, Robbinsville beat North Rowan like a drum.
Yeah.
And it was 44-14. I don't think it was the final score was all indicative about how much of a beating it was. They played Mount Airy, who really struggled against Eastern Randolph. I mean, they were behind at halftime, and Mount Airy, I think they must have gotten a tongue lash, and they scored 28 unanswered points to win 42 to. I think it was 42-14 or 42-21. 42-21, okay.
Uh-huh.
So in that one, the game's going to be in Robbinsville, and that's a big plus right there for Robbinsville.
Right.
Although we know there's not such, I'm not even going to try to joke around about that. But
yeah,
I feel advantage.
Because that's the most insane statement.
Robbinsville gets really up for that. It's a hard place for the opponents to play.
Uh-huh.
Weather-wise, it should be Mount Airy's. There's Mount Airy Mountains or Mount Airy Heights, and then there's Robbinsville. Robbinsville is a different atmosphere. It's a true mountain area. Mount Airy is really just like an extension of the Piedmont. I'm going to go with Mount Airy to win this game. I think it's going to be close. I got Mount Airy by 6. I just think Mount Airy has too much power. How about you?
Well, I had picked Mount Airy to go to the state championship, and I don't change that. And victory margin is probably going to be in that 7 to 10 point range, I think. That's what I go with. So maybe it might get to 14, but I think Robbinsville is still going to put up a fight. Who knows? It's one of those games, Jim. If the cards go right, they could win it. So I wouldn't count them totally out, but I do believe it's.
I saw Robbinsville. Saw the Robbinsville Swain game on video. It was taped, and Robbinsville was down. I mean, they were down 16 points, and I'm gonna tell you right now, that's a physical team. They had opportunities to score several times in the first half, and they went for it on fourth down. They have no kicking game whatsoever, and they were held. But I think, well, that's a powerful team. I just think Mount Airy. I think they can go vertical a lot easier than Robbinsville can. I think that's going to be the difference.
Gotcha.
Now, switching gears to the 2A East, we got Northeastern and Clinton. Northeastern can score with anybody. Clinton, probably not quite as dynamic on offense as Northeastern, but that's no insult to the dark horses. Still a great offense. Clinton's defense to me is this deciding point. They struggled against Nash Central. Nash Central scored 71 points against Hereford County, and Nash Central scored 32 points against Clinton, which is a lot of points against Clinton, but that's not bad. Clinton wins 55-32. They struggled the first half, but pulled away.
Right.
Now, Northeastern, they had to come back from behind. I picked Whitefield to beat Northeastern.
Yeah.
Northeastern scored a touchdown late game. They win 17-14. I think this is the year Clinton wins the 2A East. I got to go with Clinton. I got them by a touchdown.
Well, my prediction for this game at the start of the playoffs was that Clinton would beat Northeastern. And I still stick with that. I think it's going to be a real close ball game, though.
I think it'll be a fun game. I mean, guys, if you're ever in Sampson County or Cumberland County, Cumberland County, I'd probably go to the 71st game, come think of it. But if you're in Sampson County, I'd definitely go to the Clinton Northeastern game, or if you're in Duplin County, Wayne County, great thing to go to. I think it's going to be a great one. Now, the 2A West, if there's a game that's going to trump the 2A East, is definitely the 2A West. I think this is the premier game of the week of all classifications. Shelby at Raidsville. Shelby had their hands full against Forest Hills. They were down, I think it was 14-0 or 16-0 or something like that. And I came back and won 37-30. I knew Forest Hills. I saw them. I thought they were a dynamic team, and they played pretty darn well. But Shelby scored a lot of points. I mean, they scored I think they one time went on a 37-7 run or something crazy like that. They're playing Raidsville. Raidsville keeps on winning. They beat a previously undefeated Bunker Hill team. I think Bunker Hill is a lot more scrappy than I gave them credit for, and a lot of people gave them credit for.
I agree. Yeah.
I think they should not hold their heads low at all. I think they played well. I think this game right here is going to be a battle of speed versus size to a certain degree. But both teams have speed and size. I mean, Raceville's got a lot of speed and size. Shelby has a lot of speed and size. I just think Shelby is faster. I think Raceville might be a little bit stronger up front. We shall see on that. But I've looked at this. I'm going with Shelby. I know they're going to be on the road. I'm taking the Road Warriors by 4. I think it's going to be an epic game.
We are going to agree on this pick. I'm picking Shelby. I'm more impressed with them now than I was at the start of the playoffs after having seen them. I think it's going to be a real good ball game. You're planning to go to this ball game, you're going to see a wonderful ball game, I think. And I do believe it's going to be one of those competitive, highly competitive games, rather. 4 points is not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, I could see it being anywhere from a 1 to 7 point, game. In other words, really, it's going to come down to a score. And maybe the team that can't always say the team that has the ball last. Sometimes the team that doesn't have the ball last makes a play to win, by intercepting to end a drive or something. But I do believe it may be the last team that scores
It definitely could be.
wins. I think it's going to be so close that somebody's going to go ahead, and that'll be the margin that they go ahead by.
I just checked the forecast. It's weird. At kickoff, there's no rain right now. Kickoff, it's going to be about 55 degrees, and by the time the game is going to be over, 55 degrees.
That's the way it is here.
We're having a front coming through.
Exactly. The temperatures here are in the 50s, predicted to be in the 50s, and there's not going to be much temperature change during the game.
I think the rain's going to hold off until Saturday for us. So, I think this is going to be great. I think this is going to be these are the programs. There are programs. I know a lot of Shelby fans are talking all kinds of smack about Breesville not being a dynasty, and I had to tell people. I said, when was the first time Shelby won a state championship? And that was 1987, because Western North Carolina High School Athletic Association did not have state championships.
Right.
You're the best of 40 teams or 42 teams. And Shelby had the ability to play in the North Carolina High School Athletic Association, to play for a state, well, back then it was state regional or whatever. Sometimes it was state championship games, but they elected not to. But no slam on that. I think both programs are really good. Usually if I pick against Breesville, it's a shot, or it's because they're playing a really good team. Shelby's one of them. So, shifting gears.
I'm just going to add two traditional powers.
Yeah,
we can. If a Shelby fan argues that against Breesville, that's like, really, you really don't know the state of the state, if you will, the state of North Carolina.
Yeah.
And if a Breesville fan said the same thing about Shelby, I would say, really, because for most people's lifetime that will be involved in this, not all, but for a majority of most people's lifetime, Shelby has been a power. So good game.
Yeah, I agree with you. So going to the 3A East, Northern Nash is 71st. I've always had 71st as my team to come out of this region. Northern Nash is just showing that, you know what, we're still hungry. We lost East Lincoln the state championship last year. We want redemption. They keep on winning. They've been on the road since like the second round. I mean, they're just a great program. I think 71st might be the end of the road for them. I'm picking 71st by 6 in this game.
71st was my pick, although I didn't pick Northern Nash to be in this game. I had Havelock in this game. I had Havelock and 71st playing each other, and of course, Northern Nash took care of Havelock last week, actually rather handily. And I stick with 71st. I felt like they were the best team in the East in 3A. And I think that's going to prove out Friday night. But I do believe it'll be a relatively competitive game, meaning how many points did you say? Did you say 7?
6 points.
6. So I might be a little off on you and say it's going to be one more score more spread.
No,
go ahead.
This next game, the 3A West, I've been getting a lot of grief about. Dudley at Hickory.
Uh-huh.
Dudley's undefeated. Hickory's undefeated. I've had people say, well, who was Hickory play? And I've had other people say, well, who's Dudley played? Blah, blah, blah. A lot of trash talk on this. The game is going to be held at Hickory. I don't think the weather's going to matter. I think Dudley can play fine in 57 degrees, Hickory is a little bit, it's in the foothills, it's not too elevated, so I don't think that's going to come into play that much, maybe a little bit. It is, whenever I deal with the mountains, I usually start thinking of mountains once you get into McDowell County,
Yeah.
Marion area, and that's when you start making that incline. Hickory, it's just not that big of a deal to me.
No, quite honestly, you can keep going west, and even Old Fort is still kind of not there yet. But that's where you start your incline up.
Exactly.
At Old Fort up to Black Mountain. So
I think Hickory is going to pack the stands. Dudley is just a tremendous team. I don't know exactly how well Dudley's going to travel to Hickory. I imagine it's going to be, they should be decent. Sometimes Greensboro teams don't travel quite as well. But I think they have something to show on that. I think coaching is pretty equal. I mean, Joe Glass is a great coach. Stephen Davis has rings on his fingers, so you can't dismiss him whatsoever. I picked Hickory to win by 2. I just have a feeling that there's something special about Hickory that I had people say, well, you're biased because you just love that area. I'm like, you do know I live 45 minutes away from Greensboro.
Closer to Greensboro.
You do know I've been to the Dudley Place Stadium a whole heck of a lot more than I've ever been to Hickory. And you're calling me biased? I mean, give me a break. I mean, the fans over in Catawba County and Lincoln County don't really care for me. So don't give me that crap. But I'm going with Hickory by 2 points. I think Hickory made a statement win last week. A lot of people were laughing about the 28-16 game. First thing, West Henderson was undefeated. Second thing,
West Henderson's a good football team.
Second thing, nobody scored as much as 28 points against West Henderson the whole game, a whole season. So that's something else. And nobody held West Henderson to as few as 16 points. I mean, it keeps on going on. That was an impressive win. Could Dudley go in there and spank them? Oh, heck yeah. If Hickory plays defense like they showed against West Henderson, they're going to. I think is Hickory's the favorite. If they struggle, they sputter. If they have issues with special teams, they could easily give that game to Dudley. But I'm taking Hickory by 2.
So I'm taking Hickory as well. I'll even say just what you said as possible outcomes as to performance. I can agree with that, and also agree that, or will state that Dudley could find themselves in trouble if they don't, play a par game at least. Their own par game. In other words, play like they're capable. I don't think they have to play exceptional. But if they are not elevated much, and if they're in any way a little down for whatever reason, things could go south for them quickly, and they could see a 2-score loss in this game. But I pick Hickory. I think it'll be within a score, and I tend to believe the scoring is going to be in the low 20s, maybe low to mid 20s. I don't think it's going to be a high scoring game.
I won't tell you the person's last name. I'll tell them their first name is Todd. Todd sent me a message saying I was a fool for picking Hickory, and he said Dudley's better, and besides Hickory are all-stars from the neck down. And when I heard that, you know what he was saying? He's saying they don't use their brains. I was like, you know what? Go ahead and say that to Hickory and see how they respond to that. And I'm like, I don't even know what I mean, I thought Hickory played a pretty smart ball, to be honest with you. I mean, people just run their mouths and want to give all kinds of bulletin board material.
I mean, to beat Reynolds like they did, you gotta have some football IQ in your program because Reynolds has got it in theirs. And if Hickory didn't have it, well, then you know what? They're so athletic they don't need it. If that's the argument one wants to make, I don't think I would make that argument though. I don't know why that statement would be made unless they were just an anti-Hickory fan. I
think it's just somebody that's just really pro Dudley and just, people just run their mouths off and want to see if it sticks. So I'm like, okay, go ahead. But I'll share it with everybody on our show here.
That's right.
Make it interesting. 4A East is an interesting game. Cardinal Gibbons at Hoggard. I like Hoggard in this game. I think Hoggard beating Cleveland was huge. Cardinal Gibbons beating Rollsville was huge. I know that it was Nick Drew's defense. I think it's what I keep on hearing over and over again. Yeah. I think Cardinal Gibbons is a great team, but they were actually my preseason pick from the 4A West or 4A East. But I'm going with Hoggard on this. I think how Cleveland is such a really athletic team, and Hoggard pretty much just decimated. Beat them by 51-35. I don't think the game was ever close, really, to be honest with you. I mean, it got close at one time. I think it was 37-35. But Hoggard was pretty much in control of that game. Same thing can't be said about Cardinal Gibbons and Rollsville. Rollsville was up late in the game. Cardinal Gibbons came back. They showed they can come back. That didn't show me they can dominate. Hoggard showed me that they have the dominance capability. I'm going with Hoggard. I'm picking them by 4 points.
See, I had not picked Hoggard to be here. Obviously, I didn't pick any of the teams to be here that are here, but I had picked Cleveland to be here. And Hoggard, that's two matchups that I had on my list, actually, was those two meeting last week. And I had Cleveland coming out of that. Now I don't know. I'm picking. I did the Talking Preps picks, and this game, I'm pretty sure this game was one of the picks now, as I remember. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. And I picked Cardinal Gibbons. Maybe bouncing back and forth in my head on this game. I don't know if I would change on Friday. It's kind of one of those games, Jim, that I'm not totally sold on yet, but I would stick with Cardinal Gibbons right now. And we'll see. They just look like they're playing well here in the playoffs, better than what they were playing in the regular season even. So that's why I'm picking Cardinal Gibbons. But Hoggard did shock me with that big win over Cleveland last week. That is that makes me question this. Yeah,
that was a hard one for me. Now the last one's another really hard one for me. Independence of Weddington. Mm-hmm. I just think for Independence to win this game, I think they're going to have to play at the same level as they did against Butler at the same peak. I also think Butler. I don't know if Butler could get as high as Indy for that game. From what I gathered, it was two different intensities. There was Indy's intensities, and Butler was high, but not maybe as high as Independence. I don't think you're going to have that problem with Weddington. I think intensity is going to be pretty strong because, the last thing that Weddington wants to do is those Union County boys lose to those city slickers from Mecklenburg County. Although I don't know how far it is between Independence and Weddington. It can't be that far from each other. What? Mm-hmm. What's the distance between those two schools? 30 minutes.
Independence and Weddington?
Yeah.
It's approximately. It's not that far.
I mean,
It's
but the
close.
thing,
They're close.
Weddington's in Union County, and the one thing a Union County school wants to do is knock the brains out of a Mecklenburg County school. So I know they're going to have that chip. Independence hasn't been to the I haven't been to the state championship, I guess, since 2007.
And been to the regionals.
Regionals, okay.
Even. Yeah, this is well, the last regional that they were in was the state championship game that they lost to end, the state championship run. So that's the last regional as I remember, because Butler kind of crept in after that
Right.
and took things over. So
So yeah, we had 2000 to
was that
2006 was Indy, 2007 was Newbern, 2008 was Richmond County, and then
yeah,
9 and 10 was
I,
Butler.
I don't remember if Butler and Independence, I don't think they played in the regional. I think it was third round, but
Right.
I'm forgetting now. Um,
But
when
great
when
games.
yeah, when Butler made that run. Gary Richmond made an interesting comment that I can fully agree with because I kind of sense this. I don't think it was so much that Butler couldn't get up for it as much as maybe when you are expected to win, there's a weight that you carry with that. And if you're expected to be the better team and you're expected to win and all of those things, there's weight on you. And when things don't, and the way that game opened up, Independence just was bam, 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 bam. And they shut Butler down on the first series. And
You got to play to
that,
win. You can't play not to lose.
well, I think what happened though, I think Gary believes, and I cannot argue against that the Butler players started playing like that weight was on their back, and it was becoming hard to do the things they wanted to. The coaches weren't in that, that mode of trying to be protective of what they're doing, etc. Um, so that's a huge rival game, and those kids know each other since youth ball, middle school. They all know each other, and so the motivation, the rival motivation, desire was all there. Uh,
Right.
but I think there may have been a little more weight on their shoulders. Now, it should be noted that Weddington has been in the Southwestern 4A Conference uh, back during the time frame that we were talking about. In the middle 2000s, they were in the Southwestern 4A. But if Mecklenburg County is your next door neighbor and it's all you hear about, there's certainly motivation to beat Mecklenburg County teams.
Right.
I saw something Friday night that made me. I'm picking Independence here, and I'll tell you what I saw Friday night that has made me make this pick. I may be just totally off on this, but as the game was winding down, and Indy got an INT to kind of seal the game, Coach McFadden turned, and I wish I'd have taken a picture. It would have had to been with my phone. I don't know why I didn't video it. I wish people could see his face as he looked at the fans and his team, but primarily he was looking up at his fans. I wish people could have seen that expression. That I think it would be hard for an actor to duplicate. I'm
Right.
sure there are good actors that could, but it was a statement kind of face that we're back. We're here, we're back, and You could sense that about the team. It felt a lot like a Tommy Knott's team on that sideline Friday night.
Yeah.
It felt a lot like the team felt around the atmosphere around the team, the coaches, the way the coaches were. And of course, understand there's a lot of coaches on that staff that has state championship rings from playing at Independence. I think it's going to be a tough game, Jim. This is my game. I'm going to this game.
Got a question for you. That's the Dick University. Mike Elko just left to go to Texas.
He's going out. Yeah, he's going out west, right? Out to Texas A&M, was it?
Yeah, Texas A&M taking over for Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah.
Tom Knotts was the quarterbacks coach at Dick University for 1 year.
Yeah, and a former Duke University player.
Yeah, quarterback.
Yeah.
And I think he was maybe even a grad assistant under Red Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think a guy like Tom Knotts today, I mean, he's not going to be offered the Dick job. I can tell you that right now. They're not going to offer to somebody that's 65 years old. At least I don't see that.
A 65-year-old that has no coordinator experience.
Yeah, exactly. Could a guy like Tommy Knotts coach at Dick University and be successful?
I think that Tommy Knotts could be successful in college, but he's got to be a head coach. He can't be successful. He was a quarterbacks coach when he did his 1 year stint, and that's just not a Tommy Knotts thing. Tommy Knotts can coach quarterbacks. Don't kid me. Don't take me wrong there. But not having the control of things, that's not in Tommy Knotts.
Well, hey, he's an alpha.
Wheelhouse.
He's an alpha, and
right. But if he were offered a job, could he do well? I think he could. Yeah. He knows the game.
I think the biggest problem would be trying to assemble a staff that could coach on that level.
I was just thinking about that. How does he assemble a staff? Well, there's a coach that's doing real well for himself, Joe Cox. I'm sure he could get Joe Cox to come be his offensive coordinator. Joe's doing great in college now. I think he could come up with a staff. Could he come up with a staff to win? Man, I think so. There's a number of good coaches out. He's got to know coaches, right?
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of coaches across the state on the college level that have a lot of respect for Tom Knotts.
I mean, I think Joe is at Alabama right now.
My biggest thing is I don't want to have Tom Knotts be the next Jerry Faust.
Yeah, I understand that. And the other question is, just from a selfish point of view, is he better to kids as a high school coach than he is as a college coach, or better for kids?
I wonder how much longer Tom's going to be coaching. I think he's 66 or 60, 65, 66, 67. He's about 13 to 15 years older than I am. I'm 52. And I don't know how much longer he wants to coach,
Well, there's a competitive nature that maybe wants to keep you doing it. There's a family nature that maybe makes you want to now focus on that family.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's all. He could certainly coach another 15 years if he wanted to.
And he's going to the state championship game. Is that right?
He's going to the state championship game. Exactly.
With a 5-loss team.
5-5 entering the playoffs team. Yep.
And how many has he won at Dutch Fork now? Has it been 4 he's won?
Somewhere in that neighborhood.
Dutch Fork was nothing before he got there.
That's what I was getting ready to say. Before he went to Dutch Fork was, 5-5 was a good year for Dutch Fork. They had seasons like that, but they were not a power by any means, and nobody to be concerned with. He turned them down. He turned them around quickly.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, Tommy could probably nail a big. I just don't think Duke's going to do it. So I think if I were Duke, I'd give it a shot. I think Tommy would do better than Mac Brown's doing.
I just checked. He won 5 years in a row at Dutch Fork as the 5A champion, and then he won again last year. So he's got 6 championships in South Carolina. He won 6 at Andy, won 1 at West Charlotte.
You didn't hear what I just said, did you?
No, what's that? I'm sorry.
Now, I like the man a lot. Don't take this wrong, but I think Tom Knotts would be a better college coach than Mac Brown is right now.
Oh yeah, I heard that. I didn't want to say too much about it because I'm wearing this hat. I
understand, and I didn't say this because of that.
But I'll say the reason why my silence is probably shocking. It's probably because I agree with you.
I see.
I don't think Mac's that. I think he's too much of a CEO at this point. He's not in the details.
What I you haven't heard my conversations with my Talking Preps people. What I've said is he should be made the ambassador of football for UNC or a CEO, but he should not be involved in the coaching anymore.
What I do to him is give him a set of headphones, but have it make it a dead set where maybe someone can talk in there and he can come up with some type of plays, but he has no input whatsoever in the game. With Carolina, I saw that Carolina State game, and State has a team, Carolina has players, and that's the difference between the two programs. If you saw State play, they were aggressive on both sides of the ball. Their State's offensive line had a field day with our DL defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
We could not get any push whatsoever.
Right.
And we were tentative on defense. Instead of running to get the ball and make the tackle, we let the carrier come to us, and then we threw an arm. It's a team that's tentative is going to lose games in football.
One of the things I've always noted for a long time, and it's still true today, and it really shows up in what you saw the products on the field this past Saturday. Every year, Chapel Hill out-recruits Raleigh. Chapel Hill out-recruits NC State. They get better star players, better ranked players. NC State develops talent. Yeah. So they take what they've got and develop it into competitive talent. Somebody made a comment that probably, I'm not going to name people who make these comments in case this gets out. It's not necessarily a bad comment, but said Mac Brown's biggest problem is he hires recruiters for his coaches. So he hires guys that can recruit as well. So, but this has existed in the Carolina football culture before Mac Brown came back. You were still seeing North Carolina getting better star-rated players than NC State, but NC State getting more out of their players.
Right.
And the thought is right now that Mac has more emphasis on coaches that can recruit than coaches that can coach.
I agree with that. Gene Chizik, to me, I know a lot of people are enamored with him. He might be a great guy. I know he won his national championship ring with Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen anything that really makes me say, you know what, he's revamped the Carolina defense. I've seen a lot of talent on the ball,
right?
But I haven't seen a lot of I've seen a lot of hesitation, a lot of uncertainty on that side of the ball.
You got to remember from that game Saturday, how many field goals State.
Yeah, there was. Yeah, State had 4 field goals, if I remember right. They were.
Four?
I think
Was
what
it
was the
more
score?
than that?
What was the final score? It was 39-20, 39-20. I know
May
they
have
missed
been,
one. They missed one extra point.
may have been 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, I mean, those could have very easily, those drives could have, they weren't far from, being convertible to continuing on and maybe been touchdowns, at least 1 or 2 of them. So defensively, I didn't see, and I haven't seen a good effort really all season out of UNC. Offensively, you got the, Jim, what I was, May was having a hard, and I love Mark May. I loved him when he played here in Charlotte. He was having such a hard time. And the thing that popped into my mind, I said, you got this great quarterback, but you're playing against a school that you can call quarterback U because of so many pro quarterbacks,
Oh yeah.
even recently, that have come out of that program. Even Armstrong, while not maybe
he's a very average quarterback.
Exactly. He's not going to make it into the NFL, I don't think.
No.
But now he was injured Saturday too, by the way. He took a vicious shot in the Virginia Tech game, and he's usually a harder runner than what you saw Saturday. So some of his plays where he was running, he still ran a decent amount. He would have put more into it had he not taken that shot in that Virginia Tech game. But overall, he's not a Wilson, a Phillip Rivers. He's not, Finley. None of the guys that made it of all those quarterbacks have been making it to the NFL. But he's still a good quarterback at a college level. So. That shocked me more than anything, though, was how that game started out for Mark May.
And I'll tell people, Carolina's not a football school. We're a women's soccer school. If there ever was
women's
one.
Soccer school. Well, hey, all sports deserve equal billing, in my opinion, and it's not bad to be good in women's soccer. In fact, if we probably looked at the overall landscape of athletics right now with the women's professional soccer team, their success, it might not be a bad thing to be a good women's soccer program, because that women's soccer is that's probably the highest competitive sport there is. If you've never been to a women's soccer game, you need to go. Even a high school women's soccer game, they are brutal. They are more brutal than football players are.
I had a class with Mia Hamm at Carolina, and it was a poli-sci class. And Mia, she looks kind of slim, but that lady had muscles. I mean, she was like. I think she redshirted 1 year. I think she was at Carolina for 5 years, but she is ripped with muscles. I mean, that is a strong person, very intelligent person too, and didn't say that much, but wasn't aloof either. She would comment in the class. She was a very approachable person. I didn't know her from Adam. I didn't. I wasn't into soccer. To me, soccer is what Pele played down in South America, or for the New York Cosmos, it's not part of our culture, Brazil.
Yeah, Brazil. I played soccer 1 year in high school, and I read the Pele book back in the 70s. In the 70s, Pele was the guy.
He played for the New York Cosmos, if I remember correctly, or something like that.
The guy was just phenomenal. His athleticism on the field was just outrageous. Yeah, I think he's the first to do the bicycle kick, and which in high school in North Carolina was illegal. There were a
Mm.
couple of players that attempted it, and they got flagged too. But you know, we we weren't that good first year soccer team, and we you know, we would get beat pretty badly by teams, and there were a couple players I remember that attempted to do the Pele bicycle kick. If you're familiar with that, you know, where they
Yeah,
kick the ball this way over their head. It's
that's
pretty.
that's that's some phenomenal being able to do that.
It
Oh,
is,
I
and you
forgot to
think
give you my prediction by the Indy Weddington game. You took
I take
Indy to
Indy.
win.
Yeah.
I'm picking Weddington by a field goal.
Okay.
It's going to be a good one. It's going to
Yeah,
be a good one.
I'm picking Indy, and I'm thinking the game's going to be in the upper teens to low 20s. It could be even lower than that. I mean, it could be a lot like. The thing is Weddington and Butler are extremely similar teams in physicality and in completeness of what they can do. They're very good offensively, defensively. Special teams are good. Same things that you would say about Butler.
Right.
Of course, Butler and Weddington played to a one-score game when they met. Would probably play to a one-score game if they met again, and wouldn't necessarily put my cards on Weddington. I think Butler may have made a mistake by playing that game at their stadium because the field was in bad conditions. And that probably hurt Butler.
Yeah. One thing I was going to say about this week's, though, I think the worst I can go, I could probably, I feel good about one pick, maybe two picks.
Mm-hmm.
The other six picks, it's just a flip. I mean, this Indy Weddington game is going to be a great one. Yeah. Cardinal Gibbons Hoggard, great one.
Yeah.
Hickory Dudley, a great one.
Yeah.
71st versus Northern Nash, interesting one. I won't say a great one, but interesting one.
I agree with that.
Clinton Northeastern, interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
Shelby Raceville, historical one.
Yep.
Mount
a
Airy
great
versus,
one, actually. That would be a great one.
The great one, yeah. Mount Airy and Robbinsville. It's going to be a fun one, and I think Tarboro versus West Columbus is probably your safe one. I mean, it's just
that's probably the safest game. Yeah. Now watch Tarboro slip up. But...
Yeah, I mean, if I go 0-8, I mean, last week I was horrible. I went 9-7.
Yeah.
The week before I was actually pretty darn good. I think I only lost like 5 games.
Uh-huh.
So it's been hit and miss for me in the playoffs.
I haven't since a lot of my teams, got knocked out, so I made other picks. I didn't look to see this past week how I did with those other picks. I've just been mainly tracking what I had up front and just to see how far it gets through. I'm shut out in 4A. 3A is
and that's fine with me. If we get shut out, we get shut out. It's no big deal.
Exactly.
I mean, there's certain clowns that will try to say, "Oh, you picked so and so and you lost." I'm like, okay, who cares?
You know what, Jim? What really surprises me is I have out of the 4 games, the 8 teams that are in 1A and 2A, I picked 6 of those teams to be there. But over in the 3A and 4A, no teams in 4A and 1 team in 3A is there. So I only have 1 out of 8 that I picked at the start of the playoffs. Now that kind of surprised when I looked at that statistic, and I'm like, wow, I picked 1A and 2A better than I did 3A and 4A.
And you're much more familiar with 3A and 4A.
Exactly. That's what I thought. but I do follow the 1A and the 2A, and especially because there are some 2A teams that I like Shelby and Burns. So I try to West Lincoln. I try to follow a little bit, but that
Right.
really shocked me that I'd be 0-4 in 4A, where I felt like I knew the most.
Yeah,
And
it's interesting to state the least on that. I think it has a lot to do with 3A, 4A just being there's so much parity. I mean, just great
agreed.
parity within those classifications. Much more so in the West and the East.
Uh-huh.
Although I'll say the 4A East is fairly there's a lot of parity in 4A East, which you know you we were talking about the Final Four being Rollsville and Cardinal Gibbons, Hoggard, and Cleveland. You
Hmm.
also have teams like Pinecrest, Clayton. I mean, some pretty decent teams. Leesville Road, teams
Yeah.
that are no slouches. Newbern, and then you got like in the West though, it's like see how there's like 14 or 15 teams that
It can
you could make a argument that'd be in the Final Four.
exactly. I think the thing that I have seen out of 4A East this year, I would say, is that this might be the most parity I can remember in a while that they've had in the East.
Yeah,
I may be wrong in that, but it seems to me like it's a lot more. It's not like 4A West. And that's not trying to be negative against 4A East. It's just that 4A West is just so loaded with schools and good programs that, yeah, you can drop down to 15, what you might call the 15th best team in the West, and let them go play you know, whoever the best team is right now, Indy or Weddington, and that 15th best team has got a shot of beating um, Weddington or Indy. So
right.
that's different, uh, but it's like
Yeah.
that most years. It's hard to get through 4A West. It really is. You win a 4A West region, you've done a lot.
Well, the 4A West they now incorporates the triads
Uh huh.
and Mecklenburg County. Beforehand, it was an imaginary line. You just didn't know where that line was going to go. If it's going to include the triad or not, or
Yeah,
sometimes it'd go to Richmond County. And now it's well, at least this alignment is. But
I like
um,
that. I
yeah.
like knowing who's east and who's west.
But you know what? You got in Wake County, you have 25 teams. 24 of them are 4A, one's 3A.
Hmm.
Wake County football is just not as the same as Mecklenburg County. It hasn't been in years.
Not this
Um,
year, especially.
in the Wake
Yeah.
County, you got Rollsville, you got Wake Forest, you got Cardinal Gibbons.
Hmm.
Those are your teams right there, the big teams. And outside of that, you got a few schools over in Cumberland County. You got some Durham schools. You got a couple Orange County schools. Newbern, which is no slouch. You got the four Wilmington teams. Now you also have Topsville's down in, is a 4A school, but you don't have that caliber of schools. You have Pinecrest, Richmond County, obviously also, but it's just you just don't have the depth, and you don't have some teams in Mecklenburg County they'll have a really great team once every 4 years.
Hmm.
Wake County, you might have one really good team in 10 years, or a program might have one really good squad in 10 years. Uh, I think Wake County's just behind. I just don't think we have the culture in the triangle.
Yeah. Here, obviously, Guilford and Forsyth and Mecklenburg County. Uh, there's a lot of, just there in those three counties, there's a lot of great football. Union County, great football. Weddington being the biggest lately in 4A. Uh, Cleveland doesn't have, and that's a shame, and may never have a top level classification team. Now that Crest was it way back. Crest was
Yeah,
T1 4A,
yeah,
3A.
back in the like 85, 88, both Crest and
Yep.
Hunter House were, or no, I was Crest and Ashbrook were
Yep.
the Hunter House may have been a 4A team at one time also. I know Ashbrook was a 4A team.
Yeah, Ashbrook actually played with Charlotte Schools back in that time frame. They played in a Mecklenburg-Gaston County conference. So back in the middle 80s, early 80s, middle 80s. But now 3A is about the highest they get. But Forsyth County is producing good football. Guilford County's producing it. Of course, Mecklenburg County is, and Union County. Look out for Sun Valley next year. Sun Valley was a young team and had a lot of injuries this year.
I think West Cabarrus and Hickory Ridge and Cabarrus County is going to be good. Mooresville, Lake Norman. I mean,
yeah, they're always good, but it's kind of like most of the teams in Mecklenburg County. There's good, and then there's great.
Yeah.
And when you really narrow down Mecklenburg County, you get down to about a handful of teams that are great out of the 20-plus teams. There's a big drop-off from an Independence, a Butler, a Huff, a Chambers, dropping down to like an Olympic program I've dealt a lot with, or a North Mecklenburg or any of those other programs. There's a huge drop in what those programs can produce. So we have a lot of mediocre football too, we got Garinger.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you got Garinger. East Meck's been struggling for years now.
Harding, West Meck's not been doing great lately.
South Meck's been up and down a little bit. South Meck's had some good moments. Olympics had some good moments. Ardrikale, Providence,
they've had their good moments too. Exactly.
Yeah. Barry struggled.
Barry had a couple of points in the past where they were decent. Garinger was actually decent around 2009. 2010, I think it was, not 9. 2009 Olympic won that conference, but 2010, I think it was, Garinger won their half of the conference.
Oh, one thing I was going to mention on Monday over in Raleigh, a Southeast Raleigh kid gets stabbed to death on campus. 15-year-olds get stabbed to death by a 14-year-old.
At school?
At school.
Gosh.
And the parents of the kid that did the stabbing or alleged stabber, his mother said that he was being bullied to be very careful something might happen, and it did happen. And it was early in the morning. I don't know the details much more than that. And, I understand there's a lot of problems with our schools. There's a lot of problems with our societies, but guys, do not bring weapons to school.
That's a societal problem, unfortunately, though.
It's like a culture of violence.
This acceptance of bullying. We won't get political here, but when we see political leaders openly bully people, that sets examples. The bullying has always existed, and I am hugely against bullying. I experienced bullying when I was in school. I know.
I think we all did.
Yeah, I know what bullying. Well, thankfully, some people haven't. regardless, people should think bullying has consequences, unfortunately. And I'm not saying they're justifiable consequences. I'm saying there are consequences. You bully the wrong person, that person may be triggered, may get tripped and do something exactly like that, or carry a gun to school and shoot kids up. I believe every school shooting that's occurred, the shooter was the victim of bullying.
Right.
You would think that might start making people think that maybe I shouldn't bully because I might trigger a bully and they'll come to school and shoot me. That's the only good thing I can see that could come from the school shooting stuff or this school stabbing, is that maybe it might scare people who bully into not bullying anymore. I had not heard about that.
That's awful. And it's right after Thanksgiving. This happens right before the holidays, before the Christmas holidays. It's just a sad time. Dale, I'll tell you what, I am buried to fall asleep. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night, so let me go run.
Okay.
Dale, from Jim West to Dale and Dale Ross, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Take care.
All right. We'll talk to you Friday night.